I'm not gonna lie, I don't understand the immense amount of hate I'm seeing for this movie because I just watched Captain America Brave New World, so here are my full spoiler-free thoughts on the best and worst parts of the movie. First of all, I think Anthony Mackie was legitimately great in this movie, carrying on the mantle of Cap, and I'm genuinely excited to see him continue the role in the future and in the next Avengers movies. Outside of a few like really awkward and cringy quips they gave him in some fight scenes, I think he was great. Now, this movie definitely feels like it's trying to recapture the vibes of a Captain America the Winter Soldier and Civil War, but with this new Captain America and kind of his new Falcon. Isaiah Bradley's a huge focus in this movie, and kind of having that same intrigue of like the Winter Soldier of like, oh, what's really happening? There's something happening within, who's pulling the strings. Some of it I thought actually really worked, like the main intrigue of the film of like who is behind the scenes of this and what's their motivation. I'm not gonna lie, there were some scenes that felt like they were exactly ripped out of like the Winter Soldier and Civil War. I was like, well, those movies just did it better with characters I kind of cared about more. And it's definitely an MCU movie. Like, it's a political thriller without saying any really strong political statements, even though we're dealing with all these themes of like the president wrongfully imprisoning people and all that. It's still kind of shying away to try to be super general. Speaking of general, let's talk about the man used to be known as General Ross, who is now President Ross, aka Red Hulk. I honestly think he had the best storyline and emotional core in this entire movie, which is kind of crazy to say. Now, yes, the Red Hulk himself is not in the movie a lot at all. He's used very sparingly, but I think it honestly works for the story they're trying to tell with Ross as a human and what's happening. I was really curious how on earth are they going to handle Sam Wilson without the super serum versus Red Hulk, this incredibly powerful guy. But the big action sequence between these two, I honestly thought was really good and one of the highlights of the movie. Let's talk about the combat a little bit more in depth and the action scenes in this movie. It's very mixed for me. Like I said, the Red Hulk fight I think is very good, and there's one action sequence taking place around the Celestial that's kind of more aerial combat, getting a lot of Top Gun Maverick vibes from it that I honestly thought was pretty incredible and just super entertaining. A lot of the hand-to-hand combat feels super choppy because there's like a million cuts in between it. A lot of the stuff very early on in the movie, in like the first 30-40 minutes, I thought was just not that entertaining to watch. Like I mentioned earlier, they are throwing a lot of quippy lines at this version of Captain America that just didn't feel natural for Anthony Mackie to be throwing out here. Yeah, he's been very funny in the MCU in the past, but the stuff that he's doing that's way more serious and the emotional core of the movie works way better than him trying to be funny. There's other villains to talk about in this movie though. Giancarlo plays Sidewinder, who is just a complete nothing of a character. I honestly don't even know why they got him for this role. You should have got a way smaller time actor because he is completely wasted and the character is just a big nothing burger. Like, the movie is really just a little overstuffed for this character to even exist. Like, it's so focused in on obviously Sam, his Falcon, Isaiah Bradley, then you got Ross, his entire storyline going on, and obviously now you have the other like ghost villain behind the scenes pulling the strings, and there's just really no room for him, which is a shame. I think the thing that was most surprising to me watching this movie is the ending, because a lot of the early reviews I saw people saying they just walked out feeling empty and like things wrapped up too conveniently. I honestly thought the ending for like every character in this movie was pretty emotionally satisfying. Not to say emotional in the way that's like gonna bring you to tears, but like we're actually focusing in on the characters themselves, their motivation, everything happening in their lives over like a grand spectacle and like the end of the world. And I honestly like these more personal conflicts. I'm not saying you're wrong if you don't like this movie. There's issues that I listed and other things that I enjoyed. I can see why people wouldn't like them as much as I did, but I feel like a lot of people are going into this movie way too cynical just because of the general state of the MCU. I legitimately think if this movie released like 3 years ago, it was like right after Avengers Endgame, like maybe the second or third film after that, it would have been received way better. Even back in like phase 3 of the MCU, I think people would have been really happy with this movie if you just took this story and put it earlier in the MCU. This is nowhere near like the Marvels or a Thor Love and Thunder, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. We're actually trying to tell a decent story. Like I said, it's not all perfect, it's a little clunky at times, but at its core, it's better than those. And I think this is a little scary for the future of the MCU because it's showing the audience and obviously the execs are seeing the early reactions and critic reviews to this that, oh, if we don't have a million cameos like Deadpool and Wolverine or Spider-Man No Way Home, people aren't going to be happy with our MCU movies anymore. So we're just going to keep getting more cheap and lifeless cameos. Like, I like the cameos in those movies, but not every film needs to be that. I do have another criticism to throw into this movie, even though I am defending it heavily. The post-credit scene is barely worth your time. It is just like the clunkiest line delivery I've ever seen in my life. I swear someone typed into ChatGPT, give me a post-credit scene that's one sentence long that somewhat teases Avengers Doomsday in the stupidest way possible. At the end of the day, I had a very solid time. It kind of reminded me of the old days of the MCU. Like, this feels very similar to like Captain America, the First Avenger, or like an Iron Man 3 type of movie. Just a very enjoyable film. I'm really excited to see Sam Wilson continue taking on the mantle of Captain America. I hope he gets another solo movie in the MCU, and I can't wait to see him working with the other Avengers in Doomsday and Secret Wars. Movie gets a very solid 7 out of 10 for me. It's flawed for sure, but very enjoyable. Tap above me to watch a video where I go over my favorite parts of the new Thunderbolts trailer.